Zhang here, Biblical Success Coach. Welcome to the Kingdom Builders Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to helping provide biblical business strategies, success tips, and practical wisdom to help the faith-based entrepreneur to build your influence, expand your impact, and ultimately elevate God's kingdom. And today I got a real special guest and a real special friend, in fact, to be able to introduce to you. I'll give his full story in just a little bit, but John Thompson is going to rock your world. It's a timely time as well, too, because we titled this today, How to Lose 20 to 40 Pounds in 90 Days Effortlessly. If you would like that in your life, put a 1 in the chat, whether live or on replay. So, John, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, James. This is one of my favorite things to do. I do a lot of Facebook Lives and things for myself, for my audience, but I love being on someone else's podcast and getting asked the questions that have coming up with the content myself. I love to hear what other people are thinking. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. An absolute honor. And guys, if you're watching this, you're going to want to share this, like this, also subscribe to our YouTube so you can take a look at this and everything. This is so important. So who is John and what are we going to talk about today? So John, we've known each other for, over 10 years actually, but we've grown up together. And now John he's the founder of a movement called Limitless. It's a high-performance men's coaching program for executives and entrepreneurs, teaching them how to unleash their potential. And they're really different. And we're going to dive into that today because he has a framework called the 5 realms. We're going to talk about force, foundation, fitness, fortune, and family. So we're not only just talking about fitness transformation, but we're talking about everything else that leads to that and more. So you're going to want to listen to this, take down notes on that. Besides that, he's trained and coached people in the fitness industry for 15 years, over 3,000 clients, and locally in Southern California, right? Is that
right?
Where you guys in Southern California, they have a gym there as well too. So if you're a local, check them out as well. But we're going to talk about all different types of things. You're going to want to have a notepad and pen. This guy is smart, witty, and in your face in very positive ways. But John, my gosh, I want to start with just how you even got into fitness. Like I look at you now and you just look like this man, great family man, fit and everything. Were you always like that?
My wife will tell you that if you watch my childhood gymnastics videos from like 7 or 8, she's like, where did you get those thunder thighs from? And they were muscular thighs, right? And then shoulders. I've always had shoulders and thighs, no matter what I did as a kid. I was short and overdeveloped in those two, my thighs, and that's still mainly the case. But fitness wise, I've always been, is that what you was asking me? I forgot. Did you say how did I get into fitness? Yeah. So, gymnastics, mountain bikes, motocross. I was always real athletic as a kid and some very physically demanding sports. And so I was such a weird, geeky kid with like fitness. Like I watched and like memorized like the Total Gym infomercials and the Bowflex, and I watched it all. I watched the cardio ones. I watched the tread climber, and when all those things were on late at night, I'd watch those 30-minute, hour-long ones. I was also kind of a fan of vacuum infomercials too. For some weird reason, I liked vacuums. But anyway, so I actually asked my parents for a Total Gym for Christmas one year when I was a kid, and I just always liked it wasn't like an obsession with vanity though, how I wanted to look. It was like at a young age, I liked the idea of like muscle fibers contracting, like the physiology of it. I was interested in the subject itself. And so I used it. I was trained for my sports. I was in gymnastics. I was using the Total Gym and working out when I raced mountain bikes and I raced motocross. I was always putting together my own programs and shifting them around and trying different things, different protocols, different philosophies on fitness and exercise. And so, by the time I was 17, I think I had messed around for 10 years with different protocols. And so when I was 17, I took my first free client and trained her for some sessions. And then pretty much it's all I've done my adult life. I worked at FedEx for 1 year, hated it, and said I'm never going to have a manual labor job like this again. And became a certified trainer at that time. I got a few different certs in that year, and then started working at a kind of a big box corporate gym. And I've worked at a wellness center. There's only 2 employed positions I had, and then I opened my first facility when I was on my 21st birthday.
Wow.
And been doing that for the last 13 years, self-employed. So
wow, that's incredible. And a principle that I draw from here is God designed this all to have a unique assignment. You know, it's like this, the culture, what it tells us now is you can be anything that you want. And that sounds nice, but it's not true.
Not
So
true.
we don't want it to be that way because we're not, God's kingdom is not this boring thing where everyone's bland, but take a look at the things. If anyone's wondering, how do I find my uniqueness? How do I find my calling? What did you like when you were a child? And, you know, if you look back here with John, I mean, obviously that just makes sense there. And then you started.
What do you do? Like, what do you do
Yeah.
when you're distracted? What do you do to distract yourself from life? And so for me, was it an accident that I mindlessly watched fitness infomercials as a kid? Like, right? Like I could have done anything when I was bored. I could have watched cartoons. I could have been playing around the house doing something else, but I did that not because someone made me sit there, and not even necessarily out of boredom, but like that's what I used when I was sitting there doing nothing. I would gravitate. So I ask even people when they're in business or whatever else, I'm like, what do you do during the day when you're actually distracting yourself from the stress? What do you naturally go to? What do you like to consume? What do you like to produce in? And that'll somewhat at least point you the direction of what you probably should be doing.
Exactly. Guys, make sure to do that. In fact, if you know what that is for you, comment below. We're going to go through these, and I'm just curious to see what people say about that. So you start your gym at 21, and it sounds like it's an early start, but the reality is, like you said, you've been studying this for over, like, by that time, 14 years, right? So there's no such thing as an overnight success. There's a right place and the right time. So you get into that, and I want to dive even just right into, what have you learned now through all of that? Fitness can be confusing. Health can be confusing. You read one book, it says this. You read another book, it says the complete opposite. And especially right now, as we're recording this at the beginning of February 2023. And this is when people, honestly, most people, they failed their health goals. And they're like, why is this the same way as it was before? So in the fitness and the
About
health,
87% at this point in the year already.
87%. So let me ask
The
you,
surveys change year by year, but it's always around that same amount.
it's a lot. What have you noticed are the commonalities of why people tend to fail in their fitness and health goals?
Yeah. So pretty broad. Humans are complex. There's a lot of different reasons. I would say if you took the main ones,
Yeah.
so you titled this "How to Lose 20 to 40 Pounds in 90 Days Effortlessly."
Yeah.
People believe they deserve punishment for their past issues, right? And so they go into some type of challenge or some kind of insane program that there's no way they're going to keep up with, and they believe it's a punishment that they deserve.
Oh.
And that's from like a psychological standpoint. From a routine, though, from an actual protocol on a weekly and monthly basis, someone who hasn't worked out in years, 5, 10, 20 years, they don't all of a sudden have 15 hours a week to dedicate to something they did zero with before.
Yeah.
So they start this new program, they join some, people like this idea when motivation is ramped up, something just happened. I always say that an event happened for someone to come to me that day. And I always ask that on the phone when I talk to them. I'm like, what just happened? Why'd you call me today? Why didn't you call me 6 months ago? Why didn't you call me 2 years ago? And maybe they just discovered me, but why are you making a decision today to do this? Did you just break a chair at work? Did you just go through a breakup? What happened that's igniting you right now? Normally that ignition is actually a problem because it's not going to stay with them. So if that's the spark that ignites the fire, that's also going to burn out probably in the next, if statistics show, 30 days, maybe 60, maybe 90. So they don't have a long-term plan in the very beginning because it's an impatient desire that initiated it in the first place. It's a spark of motivation. It's a finite energy resource. And this is an infinite game. Health and fitness is an infinite long-term game as long as you're alive. You cannot use a finite resource to play an infinite game. It's going to run dry at some point, sooner rather than later. So they don't put together a plan, and why would they? They don't know how. They don't ask for help. They don't sign up for a program, and they just do whatever they find, something online, some book they read, and they start dedicating 2 hours a day, 5 days a week to this thing they don't even enjoy doing. People don't even spend 10 hours a week doing hobbies that they like.
Yeah.
Are they going to dedicate 10, 12, 15 hours a week in the gym and they dislike it? It's actually an unenjoyable experience for them. So the effortless, I use the word effortless all the time, and I try to ingrain that into much of my marketing and content and actually the program itself, because when something becomes effortless, you are now deactivating willpower and motivation. discipline and willpower and motivation are insinuating that you don't like doing the thing that you're trying to get yourself to do. You don't say you need discipline to go do something that's very enjoyable, right? You just do it. It actually takes discipline to not go do it, to hold yourself back from doing it. So I want health and fitness to be this thing that is so effortless for someone. It's not a commitment. It's not even a sacrifice. It just is. It's just part of their life. So we can get into some of the other stuff we talk about, like our M1T method, which is 2 30-minute workouts a week. So not an hour a day, but an hour a week of exercise protocol, an effortless eating, lifestyle design, dieting program that fits in your schedule, not making your schedule revolve around your eating. All of these things stem from like the bodybuilding, really like recreational health and fitness community, the people who like, and not making fun of anyone, but people who like to carry around 6 meals with them in their backpack all day, right? They love to be in the gym for 2 hours. This is their social hour. Those are the people for the past 30 years who have kind of pioneered the health and fitness industry, right? But they love it. They like that. So they think everyone else wants to do that too. So bodybuilders became personal trainers in like the 80s, and it kind of stemmed from there. And these programs are built around people who like want to do fitness like for a living, or at least make it a high hobby of them, of themselves, not people who are like, how do I make this work? But like, I'm a regular person. Like, I don't want to be a health and fitness guru. I don't want to compete in a bodybuilding show. I don't want to go do CrossFit competitions. Like, I just want to live the best version of myself. I want to be the most elite version of myself. How do I do that without 15 hours a week? Well, that's what we are for.
Makes sense. So I want to talk about this, guys. And if you're with us, we're with John Thompson. He's the founder of Limitless. And we're talking about how to lose 20 to 40 pounds in 9 days effortlessly. And this is what comes to my mind. I think, I wish that were true. But I don't know. I've heard all this other stuff. I've tried all this other stuff. Like, can that really be true? So I want to, like, for example, your M1T method. And you're working out, you're telling me I can work 2 times a week for only 30 minutes. And I'm imagining it's some crazy CrossFit, crazy high impact type of workout, but it's not. Can you kind of describe maybe some of the mechanics or the physiology on why these types of workouts that you put together actually work? Because I think if we understand, then it can allow us to be like, oh, I can actually accept that to be a reality and it to be actually true.
Yeah. So kind of 2 things to consider is, where did workout protocols even come from? Like, where did the traditional 3 sets of 10, like do an exercise, do it 3 times, do it for 10 reps? Where did that come from? Is that science-based? Is that from a study? Is that just like in culture somewhere? Did someone read that like in a magazine or something one day? And so it actually stems from an old study back in World War II. And they just happened to pick that as a protocol. And this is a funny thing you'll learn about science and clinical trials as you really dive in, is that the public really thinks that a lot of these studies are like very, very controlled and very specific. For example, the 16-8 intermittent fasting schedule, like the 8 hours of eating, 16 hours of fasting, that's actually because the guy that did that, his wife wouldn't let him in the lab for more than 8 hours at a time. So that's not necessarily based on the result they were trying to get. It was based on someone's relationship they had.
Are you serious?
That wouldn't allow them to be in the lab, right? So it's like they decide to like do something, and they do a study and they find a result. And I'm not saying studies are bad. It's where we get all our data from, but you've got to look at what studies are. It's very hard to replicate them. It's very, there's all this nuance with them. So anyway, 3 sets of 10 came from them rehabilitating World War II vets. And they just picked 3 sets of 10. Well, if you take any deconditioned person, and someone who is an injured person is deconditioned, they haven't been doing anything. They are reviving their body from a trauma, from an event. If you put anyone on a strength training regimen who's deconditioned, they will build muscle tissue and get more fit, almost guaranteed, no matter what they do. They could do 5 sets of 20. They could do 1 set of 3. They could do 3 sets of 10. They just happened to pick 3 sets of 10. The data, they presented it, they all developed lean tissue mass, they all increased their fitness capacity, and it kind of went on from there. And then there's another story about a guy who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's kind of idol. He took that and kind of ran with it and wrote a book on it. And then it just like, fitness and bodybuilding stemmed from a very few select people in the past like 75 years. You got like Jack LaLanne, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, you've got just a few key people that kind of like V-shaped it off into kind of what it is today. So it's still a relatively new industry. People didn't really work out from the beginning of time until like 100 years ago. And so it's still somewhat new. So anyway, we have to decide, why do people work out the way they do today? Well, there's not a lot of scientific reason why people work out the way they do today. But there's two things you're trying to do when you're in the gym. And this might get a little too sciencey, but focus if you're watching. This is important. When you are strength training, and this is regardless if your ultimate goal is fat loss, if you want to build muscle tissue, everybody, men and women, want to lose body fat and they want to increase muscle tissue. Women, if you think you don't want to get big and bulky, it's body fat that makes you big and bulky, not muscle tissue. So everyone needs a strength train. Strength training is the anti-aging miracle cure pill that everybody would do if it was a pill. But I always say it's dressed up in sweatpants and tastes like effort. And so we don't do it a lot of the time. So with strength training, you are trying to recruit muscle fibers. Okay. So take your bicep, for example. Your bicep isn't just one slab of muscle. It's a spider web of a bunch of different muscle fibers intertwined to make up the entirety of the muscle. When you do a bicep curl, for example, and you activate the musculature, you actually don't activate all the muscle fibers in your bicep. You only activate, this is the law of efficiency that your body runs on. It only activates enough muscle fibers to produce enough force for the weight you're moving. So let's say you can curl a 30-pound dumbbell, but you're curling a 10-pound dumbbell. Your body will only activate enough muscle fibers to produce 11 pounds of force, right? Slightly above 10 to lift the weight up. It's not until you fatigue and get close to what we call momentary muscle failure that your body will recruit all of the motor units, all of the muscle fibers in that area. And that is the first thing you're trying to do. You want to recruit all the muscle fibers you can in the targeted muscle you're trying to work. That's step one. Two, we need to fatigue them enough to cause enough muscular damage so that your body sends a signal and your brain tells your body, you need to go repair that area of the body, and you need to make it a little bit better and a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than it was previously. And that is basically the model of what we call super compensation. That's how your body gets stronger, more fit, more muscular. You increase health, you increase performance, you increase capacity through that system, through that process. What we have found is that you don't need very much exercise to elicit those two responses. We can do it in as little as one set taken to failure. Wow. You don't need to do 5 different exercises for your chest. You don't need to do 3 sets of each exercise. You can pick 1 or 2 exercises per muscle group and perform 1 set to momentary muscle failure. And it's easy to do a full body workout when you're doing that little volume, that little exercise selection, and that few of sets. So when you look at it and you're talking about doing 1 set, you can do 7, 8 exercises in the gym, work your entire body. You need about 72 hours to recover for the super compensation process to occur. You have to rebuild, remodel, reshape, and regenerate the tissue. That takes 48 to 72 hours for the body to get back to baseline. So that would be like a Monday, Thursday schedule. It's a 30-minute workout. You work the whole body. You get all the muscle tissue activated. You get this whole hormonal response, and you let the body rest for 3 days or 4 days, and then you do it again. Some people's recovery is genetic. Some people recover quicker than others, but it's around 2 or maybe 3 times per week. No one really needs to be working out 4 or 5 or 6 days a week. They can. We see people do it who are very muscular, very fit. And those people will get results pretty much no matter what protocol they do. They're in the top 0.1% of genetic outliers in the world. So that's why you'll never disprove any type of workout protocol wrong, because people with the right genetics will always get results on anything. And so there's always a group of people to point to and say, look at the results we've got here with this group. Obviously, our 10-hour week program works. And then some guy over here goes, well, look at all the people that we've got. Like, obviously, 3 hours a week works. And you got another guy, we do 10 sets of 10. We work out 20 hours a week. Look at our results. Obviously, our results work. Obviously, our program works. So that's why this will be an unending argument till the end of time, most likely, right? Because you'll always get results with deconditioned people. So the question is, how do I do it in the most effective, efficient, and effortless way possible? And that's what I believe we have dialed in, is that, listen, of course you can go to the gym for 10 hours a week and get results, but if I could get you those results in 1 hour a week, even if they were exactly the same, I'm not saying they're going to be better. Let's just say they're the same. Doesn't that make my program better, though? Because I'm saving you 9 hours a week. Imagine the business you could build with a full extra work day per week, and not to sacrifice results, to get the same, if not better results, 9 hours a week. Imagine spending that time with your family. Imagine spending that time in the Word. Imagine spending that time with your kids. Can you really justify as a man, if you know a way to get the results in 1 hour a week, can you justify spending 10 when there's all these other things you claim you don't have time to get done, that you can't
Mm-hmm.
go outside and play with your kids because daddy's got to work, that you don't have time for date night with your wife because you're just behind on things. Can you justify that schedule when there's all these other things you could be doing that are just as important? Not that health and fitness isn't important, it is. But
Yeah.
if you can do it in a much more efficient manner, that is irresponsible of you to waste time in the gym. I think it's almost even morally irresponsible to waste time in the gym when there's a more effective, effortless, and efficient approach to do so.
My gosh, you are slapping me silly in a positive way. I'm like my mind is like being blown right now because I'm trying to. It's so true. Like
It's so abnormal. It's so unheard of. No
yeah.
one knows. That's why I told you in the beginning, I felt compelled to bring this type of program to the marketplace, because so many men just say, well, I'm a family man, I'm working, it's my duty to produce, it's my duty to take care of my kids. It's also your duty to stay alive for your kids and to perform at your greatest level for your wife and kids. Your kids won't be okay if you die prematurely, right? We always say, oh, the kids will be okay. They're not going to be optimally okay without their father. You have to be and bring to the table the greatest version of yourself. And if they knew there was a way to not spend 10 hours a week in the gym, that's what everybody thinks. Most people, if you ask them, think you need to spend 1 to 2 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week to achieve anything significant at all. If they knew there was this approach, more people would strength train. More men, more women would exercise if they knew something like this wasn't a joke and that it actually worked. But there's so much bogus info out there that's not true, that also kind of has the same sounding imagery in their head. They'll disregard it, which is one of the reasons I started the free Facebook group, because I almost need to indoctrinate people in the information before they'll actually enroll with me as a coach, because it sounds so far outside the traditional health and fitness space of the messaging that's out there.
Makes sense. So for those of you that are into more information like this, like what John mentioned, he's got a Facebook group, the Limitless Facebook group, correct? That one?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll put the captions, that link in the bio. You're definitely going to want to make sure you go in there, because I don't know if you feel this way, and I've been around health and fitness for a long, long time, and I thought I knew a lot. But when I hear these things, what it does, it makes sense biologically, physiologically, like everything as well too. And I'm super excited to even try. So let me ask just one technical specific question. So what would one type of workout, let's say you're doing legs, for example, what would like one exercise be where you're telling me one set till enough type of failure is all you need? So like, what would that look like, for example?
Yeah. So fitness always has to be discussed in context. So again, if you're watching this and you're like a bodybuilder and you've put on 30 pounds of exercise-induced muscle growth, or if you're someone who hasn't worked out in 20 years, this answer is a little bit different on exercise tolerance. So I hate to paint it with a broad brush, but in essence, a squat or a leg press is going to activate the vast majority of your lower body musculature. Now, I do say one set per exercise, not necessarily only one set per muscle group. You could do something else. So for example, a leg workout could be a leg press, a leg extension, a leg curl for the hamstring, a calf raise, and that's going to hit the vast majority of the lower body. You could do a hip raise or an abduction. There's other things you could do, but those are going to be your primary 4 exercises that are going to hit the front, the back, the bottom, the top of the lower body musculature. And so you could do as little, if someone's deconditioned, they could go into a workout and do, I call it the 6 stack. They could do a leg press or a squat for lower body. They could do some type of hinging movement, which is like a deadlift or a low back extension on like a Roman chair. They would do a vertical push, like a shoulder press, a vertical pull, like a pull up or a pull down, and then a horizontal push and pull, like a chest press or a push up, and then a back row, a horizontal pull. Those 6 exercises are going to hit virtually every muscle group in your body.
Wow.
So you could do those 6 exercises for only 6 sets, one of each one, and you'd be out of the gym in about 12 minutes. If you rested longer in between, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 18. Now, a more advanced person could tolerate some more volume, but more volume is still, it's up in the 10 or 12 exercises, which still can be done in 30 minutes. So it varies. It could be, I've done lower body workouts. It took me 7 minutes and I was toast. I was done. I was on the floor in like a cardiovascular, like responsive breathing, heart rates at 180 with 0 cardio whatsoever, only strength training exercises. And so that would be kind of a foundational thing of like, hey, if you want to hit, you don't have to do a bicep curl. You don't have to do a tricep extension. If you hit those upper body push pulls, a lower body hinge and a press, you've basically hit everything.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to personally replay this and I'm going to start implementing this, and I'll be your next testimony.
I'll send you something as well. Yeah, so you can follow a little more
Awesome.
detail.
That'll be great. So guys, this is super key. And I think if you want to be actually healthy, hit your fitness goals, so you can be more productive in your business, in your life, and everything in your family, this is so important. Strength training, I completely agree with, is like the fundamental of a good, healthy life and a vibrant life and everything. So I want to pivot as well too, because you have your effortless transformation. You have this core that you discussed. What I found also fascinating, because when you're helping people transform, and guys, you got to check out his Facebook group, because the types of transformations that there are is incredible. You're seeing people in all decades have six packs. I do want to ask you this. Okay, for men, typically, six pack is like one of those goals. And you're having people. What's the oldest client you've had that has a six pack?
65, I think.
65.
Yeah.
65. There's no excuse. So what's the secret to a six pack?
Starvation. And I'm being serious. So everyone asks me when they're on like going on a diet, they're like, well, I don't want to go into like starvation mode. And I say, well, actually all fat loss diets are moderate starvation diets, which is why your body's literally cannibalizing its own tissue, because you are not giving it the energy that it needs to function throughout the day. And that's a good thing when you want to lose body fat. So you've over-energized in the past. Body fat is simply stored energy that you ate at some point that you didn't burn off. And so it's been stored as adipose tissue. And so when you start burning X and you're eating X, that gap in between, that vacuum, has to be fulfilled by the body somehow. So your body can trigger you to be more hungry. So it tries to get you to eat more food. But if you resist that and you keep this gap in between what you burn and what you consume, your body has to cannibalize tissue in order to fulfill those energy needs. Now, it can pull lean tissue. You can lose muscle tissue, nervous system tissue, organ tissue, and you can use fat mass, fat tissue, which is what we prefer, right? And that's a whole other conversation for itself of how to make sure your body loses as much fat tissue and as little lean tissue as possible in that process. But in reality, you don't need any exercise whatsoever to lose body fat. That's why I get someone to even accept the idea of doing 2 30-minute workouts a week. They're like, you can't lose weight on 2 30-minute workouts a week. I go, actually, you can lose weight on 0 minutes of exercise per week. You just have to eat less than you burn. Now, you won't like the type of weight you lose. You'll lose a lot of lean tissue if you only diet and don't work out. You want to add muscle tissue while you're losing fat tissue, or at the very least, keep all your lean tissue while you're losing fat tissue. But it's all about the diet. So I always say that your diet, what you eat, food is information, and exercise is a signal. You need to create the signaling when you exercise that your body needs muscle tissue and doesn't need fat tissue. Now, cardiovascular activity doesn't send that type of signal. Running on a treadmill, rowing, ellipticals, those things, you don't need a lot of muscle activation to do those types of activities, which is why you see kind of the skinny, kind of frail looking runner body, right? So lots of cardio, it will burn body fat, but your body will get the signal that it doesn't need lean tissue, because you don't need to be muscular to run. You just got to be able to swing one foot in front of the other one through your hips. And so your body will lose all types of tissue when you do excessive amounts of cardio and a low calorie diet. But strength training sends an entirely different signal to the body. It signals that you need lean tissue, you need muscle tissue, because if you lose it, that workout is going to be harder next time you do it, not easier. And that goes against the law of efficiency that your body tries to do. Your body wants to make things easier. It does not want to make things harder for you, but you have to send it the signal to do so. So your diet, it's not, you hear lots like 80-20, 80% nutrition, 20% working out. I would say it's not that. It's 100% nutrition and 100% exercise. Nutrition controls 100% of the things that it controls, and exercise controls 100% of the things it controls. They don't interweave very much. They do different things. You can't nutrify yourself through exercise. Yeah. Right. Like you don't get nutrients from exercise. You get those from food. You can't build muscle by eating. Eating is part of the muscle building process, but you have to stimulate the muscle fibers to actually grow and become more fit. You can't become more fit just by eating differently. It will affect your fitness, but it won't do the whole thing, right?
Makes complete sense. I feel like I should change the title of this to Obliterating Fitness Commonly Held Myths. So I love it. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks for
So just to clarify that answer, how do you get a six pack?
yeah.
You are in a energy deficit as long as it takes to remove the body fat safely. Not everyone has the genetic predisposition to have a very visual six pack. There's some tendons around your abs that'll create a deeper cut there, and some people don't have that. They'll have more of a flatter looking stomach. Some people have much thicker, more dense like skin, and so they can't see things as well. Some people just look more vascular, but people that you see online, steroid use is much more prevalent than you think it is. Like if you're wondering if someone's on steroids, it's almost guaranteed they are on them. If they definitely look like they're on them, they're on them. And if they kind of look like they're on them, they're also just probably on them with worse genetics, but they're still on them.
Mind blown. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, it's crazy, guys. You know what I love about you, John, is everything you say is so truthful. It's so fact-based. It is so like you've done your studies, right? And this is what's needed for anybody that wants true transformation. It's an overplayed, over cliched part of scripture, but if you know the truth, then the truth will set you free. And of course, that stems in all these different parts. So in fitness and health, you're speaking straight truth right here. This is one of those that people need to share. Like seriously, like I'm like mind blown with everything I'm hearing here. So I want to shift gears as well too, because what's fascinating is you dove into not just fitness, but you also dove into, you have something called the limitless life wheel. And when you transform people, and it's not just fitness, it's definitely an important part of it, but it's one of the five. So it's force, fitness, family, foundation, and fortune. Yeah. Which is awesome in this. And what I found interesting is when you talk about this, you talk about force. And I found it's like you describe it as the hub to your wheel. Can you describe, I guess, how did you come up with this life wheel, and how did you figure out that force was at the center of this?
You're doing such a good job hosting this, by the way, and leading this on a very understandable path, subject by subject. So great job, by the way. So that's one of the key things about Limitless that I found being a problem in the beginning with training people, but especially men, and that's why I ended up focusing on men, is that I had a guy lose 100 pounds with me one time, and that's happened multiple times, but this was a specific guy. And about a year later, I was talking to his friends. He had quit, something happened, and he had gained all his weight back. And that had happened before, but it hadn't happened to that extreme. Like his life was transformed. Like he had that attitude of like, I'm never going back. I feel so different. This is amazing. And then something happened. And that's happened with people before. They lose 10 pounds, gain it back, lose 20 pounds. But this one just hit me harder because of the amount of weight it was and the conversations we had with each other. I just didn't think it was going to happen with him. And this was years and years ago. And this was kind of the infancy of Limitless. And I thought, no one ever falls off the so-called fitness bandwagon because something in fitness happens. They don't forget how to eat all of a sudden. They don't forget the life-changing transformation of the workouts. They don't forget how to do any of that thing. Yeah. What pulls them out of the fitness realm and self-sabotages them? What is it? Where is their focus? What's the stressors? What's happening to them? So I went to the drawing board. I'm like, where do men occupy? Like, what is their reality? Where do they live? And I came up with 7 realms at one point. I tried to get it down to like 3, and then I had like 9. And I eventually settled on what we call the 5 realms: force, foundation, fitness, fortune, and family. It's very rare that ever someone falls out of the fitness realm because of the fitness realm itself. It's one of the other realms that pulls them out. Something goes down, crashing and burning. It causes them to self-sedate and self-sabotage in the fitness realm itself. They are drugging themselves somewhere, with eating, with entertainment, with drugs itself, with alcohol, with something else. So what's happening? So we figured out that men occupy force, which stands for life force, your spiritual reality, your force that drives you, your foundation of the mind, the principles that guide you, the fitness that thrives you, the fortune that provides for you, and your family, the relationships that are all together. And most people want better relationships at the end of the day, right? They don't necessarily want just weight loss in and of itself. They believe it's going to do something for their life further out, more in the external, that's going to be better for it. When that doesn't happen, when something falls apart, they lose their job, they lose their business, they lose a relationship. When something happens, everything starts falling apart. But the hub, the reason force is the hub of the wheel, because a spiritually broken man will burn everything down around him. Inside a foundation of his mind, his business, his fitness, his relationships, he will wreck all of them because he's spiritually not in an ascension mode. He's not taking care of the spirit. So you'll see very successful people, and most of the time that's from a fortune standpoint. They're very successful in business, but they have no body and they have no moral compass. That's going to cause problems at some point. Like God makes the rules of economics and nature, and we can play them outside of his guidance if we want to, but at some point something's going to happen. So force has to be the center of the hub. So I raced mountain bikes, I raced motocross. You can have a loose spoke and it might puncture through your tube and give you a flat tire. You can have a broken spoke and still finish the race. So I look at foundation, fitness, fortune, and family as spokes that can be broken for a short period of time. And as long as your spiritual awakening, as long as you are set on a spiritual path that is correct, and you're on your path, you're on in your calling, you'll survive, you'll rebuild, you'll take care of it. You'll be able to withstand the adversity that comes from it, but not when the spirit's broken. So a hub of a wheel, if you've ever seen a motorcycle or a bicycle hub crack, the entire wheel unravels in on itself. It doesn't matter what the other spokes are doing. All the spokes can be strong and they collapse inward. The wheel collapses and you can't ride home. You can ride home with a flat tire. You can ride home with a broken spoke. You can't ride home with a broken hub.
True.
That's where the limitless life wheel came from. And so, and our E3, our core pillars of coaching is we have eating, exercise, and what we call executive coaching and accountability. The executive coaching and accountability is pretty much what no other fitness program has. Everyone teaches you how to eat, and they may teach you incorrectly. They may teach you a fad diet or something that doesn't really work. They'll teach you an exercise protocol that's probably too much. It's probably too many hours a week. It's probably unnecessary, but it will work.
Yeah.
What they don't teach is the executive coaching and accountability for the other realms of the person's existence that's actually going to be the reason they fail in the long term in this endeavor they're trying to achieve right now. Yeah. And so if you only coach someone as a health and fitness professional, performance coach, if you only help someone inside the realm of fitness you're doing them a drastic disservice, because those aren't the reasons that they had a problem in the first place. They had childhood trauma, they have current life stressors, and when anything gets tough, they pull themselves out of it and they drug themselves somehow with something. And a lot of entrepreneurs, for example, executives and entrepreneurs, a lot of them are youngest children of a family. They're used to dealing with chaos, and they become addicted to chaos. And they like to burn things down to rebuild them. Like they wouldn't consciously admit this out loud, but they subconsciously do it. It's subconscious self-sabotage. They burn things to the ground because they like building things. They like to lose weight and gain it back because they can get on a quantified fitness program again where they can watch the scale drop down each week. There's no more weight to lose. There's nothing to quantify. There's nothing to look at. And so they subconsciously self-sabotage, gain the weight back just so they can lose it again. They would never admit this. They don't even know that this is what they're thinking, but this is what they're doing. They're addicted to chaos. They're addicted to burning things down so they can rebuild it again.
Wow. My gosh. It's so true what you said, being the hub. And I wonder, for those listening right now, have you seen this to be true, that when your spiritual life is not aligned, just nothing can work? And that's where I went. I don't know if I told you this, John. I had a period where business was good, and then we went through a bunch of debt, a whole breakdown, a deep depression. And, I tried to do the fitness thing. I tried to do my business. I tried to, be better with my family. Nothing else worked. My spokes fell off. It's entirely true because my hub was gone. And the first thing that I did actually worked is I had to go to God, and I had to go back to the hub. And when I did that, then I added on fitness, and then I added on everything else, and it was able to build upon each other, and it climbed me out of depression. So just curious personally, when it comes to your faith, did you grow up a person of faith, or did you find faith along the way? What was your journey like?
Yeah, fortunately, I did have two Christian parents and brought us up in church. And so I've had my own, sinful nature and fall offs in, my teens and early 20s where I, was not on the right path. But I've never disputed it. I've never said I wasn't a Christian my whole life. I have been, but I did the investigation. I did go through not an atheist time frame, but like, why do I believe what I believe? And I believe everyone needs to go through that so they can actually argue their points and realize that. Am I a Christian? I went through that at one point. Am I a Christian because my parents are? Because from a cultural standpoint, it's popular or it's easier to be one, or do I actually believe this? And so that's when I dived into apologetics and a lot of Christian scientists and looked at what is this what the media, does the media tell me that all scientists are not Christians, or is that actually true? And it's not true. There's lots of very, very smart Christian scientists, but you don't know they exist because the media doesn't want you to think that.
Very true.
And so I dived in for several years, and I still constantly love to study apologetics and more things about science and space and everything that would just points more and more to a divine nature and creator and some transcendent being that lives outside of time, matter, and space that created everything. And so that's been my upbringing.
I so love that. And you guys can tell John's a very analytical guy. I mean, who thinks about the total gym and muscle fibers when they're 7 years old? It's like you don't think about these types of things. However, it's interesting because the more and more you dive into this, especially being a fitness expert and being a business expert, the more you see the truth of what actually works in all these different spaces, the more it points to a creator. Like you just cannot explain this. Is there anything about the body in particular that you've noticed, or just, how we've been designed where you're like, oh my gosh, that's too much of a coincidence to be true?
Just the overall efficiency, like I talked about earlier, the efficiency of the body to direct you on a path of the highest efficiency possible, the way muscle fibers work, the way the body protects itself, the way the immune system works, the way the brain protects itself from trauma. Just there's so many things that are so divinely designed by a creator. Even just the need itself, right? We talk, I think it was Tim Keller, someone who talked about the clues of a God earlier when you discussed about everything was burning down around you, and depression, everything was kicking in. You try to fill that void that's happening spiritually with those other spokes, right? Like more money will fix this, or better health will fix this, or a deeper relationship or a better human relationship will fix this. And I'll break up with this one, get a new one. My mindset's just off. I need to read more books and get my intellect up. That'll help me. And those things are good, but they won't fulfill that hole. That hole is specific, that human desire, that need to fulfill that space with a creator. The fact that we have that desire is a clue that something's supposed to be there that's divine in nature, right? It can't be fulfilled with books. It can't be fulfilled with drugs and alcohol. It can't be filled with food. It can't be filled with entertainment. It can't even be fulfilled with a spouse, with a human companion or children. It's fulfilled in a spiritual reality. And there was a survey done years ago, I think it was by Dr. Lloyd, talked about it, but I forgot where it actually came from. But they said, and I'm sure this would change decade by decade, but 97% of people believe in some form of spiritual reality. Think about politics. Think about the climate today. Can you get 97% agreement on anything across the board? I mean, you could just ask, like, is 2 + 2 4? And probably 5% of them would say, no, it's not. Right? It's Common Core. But so 97% of people believe in some form of spiritual reality, and it's nothing they can point to. It's nothing that they can show on paper. It is something that they feel as a void, or they feel it fulfilled. They feel something there, and they know something transcends time, matter, and space.
Yes.
And Dr. John Lennox says it really well, that the difference between atheism and theism is that they both believe in some type of eternal something. An atheist has no issue believing in some type of eternal energy that created everything, a Big Bang. They seem to have the biggest issue with thinking about an eternal person. And that's actually easier for me to believe, is that there's some type of eternal intelligent being. If a free-flowing energy force created everything in the universe, I don't get where we come from. Why our compassion, our altruism, our consciousness, where does all that come from? From a mindless, guideless energy source that spoke everything into existence, or accidentally exploded everything, and nothing from nothing to nothing, It's not a hard thing for me to back up into and say an eternal person makes absolutely more sense than an eternal mindless energy source.
Absolutely.
And
I think about Frank. Do you know Frank Turek, the
yeah, I
apologist?
love Frank. Yeah,
Yeah. So his book is I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. That's
yeah.
exactly what I hear
Got
when
that
I'm
book on the
talking
shelf out there.
to. Exactly. Okay. And as we go towards the end of this, I'd love to hear too, for being a person of faith and being an entrepreneur as well too, a successful entrepreneur. I think there's such a gap between the two. It's kind of like we usually think, faith is at church on Sunday, and then work is work as well too. And obviously, it's within your five realms as well too that you teach as well. But even personally, as an entrepreneur, running your business day to day, how does faith play a role in your own business?
I feel like I could go a few different ways with that.
Yeah,
Maybe a little more specific on what
yeah.
do you mean by how does it play in what way?
Like when you're going through your day, like, and you're thinking about your faith, like, how does that even have a whether it's a strategic implication or a practical implication, like is there any influence of that as you're even running your business, or is it like
Okay.
God is Sunday and then the rest is work is work, that type of thing, like, or are they interwoven at all?
They're definitely interwoven. That makes more sense now. I would say it's part of your core values, right? Everyone runs a business. Anyone runs a successful business has core values,
Mm,
whether that's a mission statement for their employees to look at as well, or just for them. You have something that guides you, and your core values are things you won't break, no matter what
mhm,
money could come from them, no matter what growth, expansion can come from them. If they don't meet your core values, the answer is no. Or if they do meet your core values, the answer is absolutely yes. And you
mhm,
have to go that route. That's your path, and you don't veer from that. If you do, you will hate yourself. You will self-sabotage. You will not like the life you create if you have these core values that you come off from. So
mhm,
I would say that my core values have to be aligned first with, as a Christian, is this a yes or a no answer? If I was running this, I don't run my business as a ministry per se, but if it was, would I do it this way? Would I promote this thing? Would I partner with this thing? Would we go this way
mhm,
if that was my sole intention? Now, as a business, your sole intention is to make people's life better and make a profit, or you're running a nonprofit, right? But the definite everyone goes into business with their own worldview. So whether you're an
mhm,
atheist or a Christian or something else, you have a worldview that dictates how you see reality to be and the best way to operate in that reality. And so just my overall worldview and my moral compass
mhm.
is part of that core value system. And so that would guide my operations on a day to day for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And it's so key because you have to run your business by principles. If you want to run something large, if you want to transform thousands of clients' lives, like there needs to be things that are fundamental. And what I hear from you, John, is everything that you do, there's guidelines to it, whether it's in your actual fitness guidelines, it's in your actual realms guidelines, or even just your personal values. Everything is aligned. And if you're listening to this right now, I hope what you're seeing is an example of success. And success, I was asked this yesterday. I was quite the ruckus. What is successful? Is it having a Bentley and tons of money and stuff like that? Like, no, success is being able to fulfill God's design for your life. And what I see when I'm talking to you, John, is somebody that is grounded in truth, someone that is servant minded, and someone that is fulfilling your call at higher and higher and higher levels. That is success. God never made a dud, right? He only made studs here. So I love that you're sharing all that. So impactful and powerful. As we go and we wrap up here, a couple quick questions. And thanks for all your knowledge, man. I'm going to be replaying this personally because I'm like, oh man, I was gonna work out today.
Thank you.
I'm gonna not work out today. I'm gonna work out tomorrow, do a full body workout. So,
Great.
oh my gosh, a couple last questions. But just curious. So, do you have any favorite Bible verses or stories at all?
I wouldn't say I have any like long term, like lifetime favorite. I love Genesis 1:1 because
Mm,
there's the transcendent God speaking everything into existence, right? And like
mm,
the rest of the Bible and the rest of our existence is all dependent on that first breath of life into everything, right? So,
true.
and then John 3:16 so important, obviously, for all of us. It's one of the reasons it's the most popular verse. I really like recently Proverbs 1:7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge.
Mm,
And Proverbs, for those of you, Proverbs is the top business book of the Bible. Read Proverbs. business principles, and you'll be successful if you live by them. But
1000%.
that it's not just the optimization of knowledge or intellect from fear of the Lord. It's at the beginning. It's like you can't even open the book until you have the fear of the Lord first, because he's the author of all truth, right? Humans cannot author truth. We can discover them, we can reveal them, but we don't author them. And that's super anti-culture right now as well, right? We're so subjective. A truth is, and Frank says it too, right? Truth. If truth is subjective, that statement can't even be true, because you're making an objective statement that truth is subjective. There's no absolute truth. So is that an absolute statement in and of itself?
Yeah.
So, and that fools, despise wisdom and instruction, which I almost feel like is almost saying two things. And I don't want to misrepresent scripture, but if you have the fear of the Lord, you are at the beginning stages to be able to move into the realm of knowledge. But then a fool despises, and I'm paraphrasing because I forget exactly how it says it, but and I read different versions of the Bible, ESV and NIV and everything. So anyway, I almost feel like it's a warning to you of like, if you don't fear me, you're going to move into this realm of not being able to understand truth. There's going to be all these things that manipulate you, and Satan loves to manipulate things. He doesn't care why you're confused, as long as you just aren't on the path of truth, right? But I almost feel like it's an external warning too. If you are the person who fears the Lord, and you are in this life of truth, that just a warning, you're probably not going to get a lot of social confirmation on it, because most people despise that, which means they're going to despise you, because they despise God, they despise the truth. And so they live in that realm. So you cannot coexist completely with them at an intimate level, right? Because they're going to be antagonist against you. So anyway, I just feel like that's appropriate for the time being in society.
Well said. And it's important that we stay to the truth with a capital T. And that's what right now, that's what we need. And especially for kingdom-based entrepreneurs, faith-based entrepreneurs, the biggest ministry in the world is going to come through the marketplace, as Billy Graham and Pastor Rick Warren say, because the truth of the world is sex and status and, recognition and all these things, which are great, but not the thing, not the truth. They're blessings from the Lord, right? It says the blessing of the Lord adds with it no sorrow. But if people in the marketplace are able to live out their truth, the truth itself, and showcase that these things work, like what you mentioned, just read through Proverbs and apply the stuff, it works. It then will allow us to be able to showcase others there is one way. And if you follow that, hey, life can be a lot better right there. So
Frank says it too, that, almost all sin stems from the greed of power, money, and sex. And power is good. Money's good. Sex is good. But the greed of it, and then coming off the truth of the moral compass of how God intended you to live, to get those things, to do it in a way that is outside his design, now we have our problems.
So well said. Oh my gosh. John, any good books or even pastors that you might recommend for us? It could be spiritual and not spiritual, but anything that's helpful for the faith-based entrepreneur.
Pastor wise, I love for apologetic stuff, Frank Turk's great. John Lennox is great. Pastor focused books, John MacArthur, I like a lot. Business books, the classics, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends. These are all great. And there's always some weird stuff. I hate to recommend a book and say, oh, I recommend every page of that book. I recommend the general concept. Think and Grow Rich has got some weird stuff in it, right? How to Win Friends has some strange stuff in it. Sometimes it's good for networking, not necessarily building relationships. So these are the Psycho-Cybernetics is one of the most underrated books, I think, for people, regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not. And that's written by an actual doctor. And that's, no one's written a book like that in the past 75 years since that came out. Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz will really get you out of the way you think about yourself and the way you think about life, and in a really, you just feel the truth coming out of it of why it works and why it's real. And it's written from the perspective of someone who is a doctor. So I like that a lot.
I so love that. Yeah. If you guys haven't picked up Psycho-Cybernetics, I haven't read the book, but if I've studied a lot of Bob Proctor, who studied that book a lot. So I've heard it. I need to read it. So thanks for that. And as we wrap up, guys, if you're not connected with John, connect with him on all of his social media platforms. Find him on his Facebook. Join his free group, Limitless. If you thought this was good, just imagine what's going to be in his group as well too. If you're going to look for a coach, honestly, go to this guy, because I'm about you. I want to lose 20 to 40 pounds in 90 days effortlessly. That word sounds good. And you heard why it is that way. Like, this isn't just some BS stuff. This is science-based, physiological-based truth that's going on, you know? So I just go to him just for the wisdom on that, because that's going to be incredible. But as we go towards the last questions here, just wonder, do you have any type of a message to the faith-based entrepreneur that you'd like to be able to give them?
Stay focused, stay secure. Don't veer off of fear. We live in a divisive world today, and there's depending on where you are, this could happen. Someone could come after you. Someone may not like what you have to say and bring lawsuits against you. That you can get attacked. No one's above being attacked, and we don't necessarily deserve not to be, right? The disciples were attacked. If you're in this, you know, have a warrior spirit, be part of the warrior movement, right? Don't have this, oh, I wish I wasn't born in this time. Oh, what are my kids? You know, am I bringing my kids into this world? Like, they were born. God had them be born for such a time as this. He's had you be born for such a time as this. So rise up as a warrior. Don't have fear, and live. I hate to say live your truth. I hate that phrase, but your truth for life, your guide, your path, live it, and don't veer off because of fear of what people are going to say or potentially do to you, because that's not a warrior spirit.
Amen to that. Heard it well. All right. And as we end this, do you mind leading us in a quick prayer?
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you. Lord, thank you for this time together with James today. Thank you for blessing our conversation. We pray that it brings value to the listeners and life transformation in the way that you would want it to be. Bless their lives. Anyone who's hurting or anything on this today, we pray blessing over them. Let them hear you, dive into your word, and just for everyone listening, we pray that they are will be touched by you through this message, through this podcast. So thank you for using us as a tool today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks so much for that, John. Everybody, John Thompson, follow him and everything. Share this. And if you're not yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe, because there's going to be this and so much more as well too. With that, be blessed to be a blessing to others, and we will talk soon. Thanks so much, John. So appreciate it.